for not good reasons. I'm looking at some of your compatriots who were also in conflict with security forces, with soldiers as well. And I'm wondering if you can actually help us out and let us know what happened to them. Because this story isn't just about you, it's about what happened to some of them. Just looking here at an MP who relapses after being taken off life support machines. You'll see his picture there. Who is that? Tell us about his story.
Thank you, Femi. I'm privileged to be here, finally, physically. Like you said, this is not just about me. It's about very many people who were arrested with 33 others. The Honorable Francis Zake continues to fight for his life in a hospital in India. There are other little-known personalities, like a lady who had just had a baby by cesarean section, so beaten that by the time I left home, she was passing blood. The Honorable Paul Mwiru, who broke his hand, Atiku, whose back got permanently broken, and indeed a few others that had been brutalized even before the 13th, like the Honorable Namboze, who is permanently disabled. She sustained a broken skull. So this kind of brutality was only not new to us. Our case, we just privileged that attracted not only home attention, but attention the world over. And actually, that's why I take it upon myself every day, even against my doctors and family's advice, to try and make use of every opportunity to raise that voice and raise awareness of the brutality that's ongoing back home.
And it's much appreciated. We got a video comment from Rose Bell, a writer and blogger in Uganda, and she reminds us of the Arua 33. Have a listen to what she says.
I think it's very important to talk about political violence that happened in Arua beyond the figure of Bobi Wine. We need to know that there were 33 people charged in total, and among them there are 4 women. In the violence that they faced, these women, some of them have broken pelvic bones. Many of them cannot walk. They are still in hospitals. So when we only talk about violence in terms of one person, then we fail to get the whole story of what happened. And it's important to continue to give solidarity to these people and to bring the attention of these stories of women. But what is very important is to know that often when women are caught up in political contestations, in that violence, their stories tend to go at the bottom of the pack.
So she mentions women being at the bottom of this pile when people think about those who are injured, but also she mentions the Arua 33, those who are also charged. What do you know about them and their cases?
Well, like I said, very many were brutalized, very many people were beaten. I've mentioned a few of them. If I was to mention all of them, we would maybe take most of the time of this show. There's another lady that cannot go off my mind called Sauda Madada. She's still in hospital in Kampala. Many of them are in hospital, but most importantly, I would thank God that some are in hospital still fighting for their lives, and indeed I'm here speaking for them, but there are those that pay the ultimate sacrifice. For example, my driver, Yasin Kauma, the guy who took the bullets that probably were meant for me, he lost his life. He was killed by the security forces, and many others continue to be killed in what government claimed were riots, but indeed there were moves to, you know, create more fear within the population.
You posted a picture of your driver, and it was so horrific we couldn't actually share it. We did a stream show very close to that incident, and you posted it so everybody could see. You saw that, and this is your reality, this horror, this violence. People, your friends, people close to you are dying. How do you then strategize your way through this? How do you stay sane?
Well, we have no option but to try to stay sane. But again, we also have no guarantee of sanity, especially if our leaders have outrightly decided to behave in an insane manner. You know, it is outright brutality that's being unleashed on the population every day. Every time the citizens try to raise their voice, they're met with brutal force. So guaranteeing sanity with the population is a hard one. However, we continue to preach to the population, telling them that we, especially we as people power, or we as forces of change, are not, we don't promote violence. We look down on violence. We don't respect violence. And indeed, we continue to disagree with whoever tries to paint an image of violence with us. We continuously using the constitutional methods of demanding for our freedom, which we believe we shall gain.
We got a few tweets that are like the one I'm about to read, and I will say the majority of tweets that we're getting from Ugandans and people from across the continent and the world are in support of your struggle and your story. This is Patriot Anisha. She writes, Bobi Wine is behaving like most opposition figures when they're outside their countries. They want to discredit everything about the government and spread all sorts of lies. This is being investigated, and if he has information about it, he can come in and share it with the Ugandan police. What do you say to people who think this?
Well, I don't know how much more information I have to share with the police about the brutal murder of my driver, which was orchestrated by the security forces. I don't know how much more information to give the police about the guns that they claimed they found in my room, and then they later dropped the charges. I don't know where to run for justice when the people that are actually paid to protect us are the ones that are brutalizing us. And I don't know whether it is moral to keep silence about the injustices that are being unleashed on the Ugandan people. I believe that it is important for me to use this voice that was even raised by the common people to raise their plight.
Let me remind our audience what happened when Bobi Wine came out on bail. So this was after he was beaten, after he was tortured, and this was the reception that he got. Have a listen. So joining us from Kampala, we have Chris Barumusi, and he's the acting Ugandan Information Minister. Minister, is this politics Ugandan style? What is going on here? Why are people dying? Why are people being beaten? Why are people being tortured because they don't support your party?
Thank you very much, Fema, and I want to send warm greetings to all of you in the studio. I have listened to my friend Bobi Wine, and what he's describing and what you are asking is not actually how the situation is in Uganda. First of all, it is important to know that he starts the story halfway, because in Arua, there were by-elections where the member of parliament had died, and the Honorable Bobi Wine went to support one of the candidates who eventually won, Honorable Kasiano Wadri. And on the last day of the rallies, when the president, who is the chairman of the NRM party, the ruling party, was returning to where he had landed his helicopter, a procession of supporters of Honorable Kasiano Wadri, who was supported by Honorable Bobi Wine, pelted the president's motorcade. The president in which the vehicle in which the president was traveling was hit with a stone, and the hind glass was shattered.
Okay, so Chris, Minister, excuse me, Minister, so the president's car was pelted, and we've got at least one person on life support, some people being damaged for life. Are you saying all of these people were responsible for pelting the car, and so that was why they were beaten up and tortured? Because I asked you, is this politics Ugandan style, and you're telling me about a motorcade being pelted? The two are connected?
No, the point I am bringing that before you go into torture or assault, there was violence orchestrated by the protesters who supported one of the candidates. And that's what led to the security officers to to swing into action to arrest the suspects, including some of the members of parliament, including Honorable Bobi Wine. So that's what gave rise to the arrests.
Bobby, what do you want to ask the minister right now? As you're in the United States trying to heal right now. What do you want to ask the minister right now, live on TV?
Well, I could have had so many questions to ask, but
Sure.
the fact that I was initially arrested and 2 machine guns were paraded by the Uganda police and indeed the army, claiming that those weapons were got in my room, and that's the reason they gave for incarcerating me in military detention, which they later dropped. And then immediately, just minutes later, when I got out of the military court, I was charged with treason, and indeed there was a claim that the people that apparently pelted the president's car were part of us. My question is, the president's car is armored. Now, why would, first of all, how can a mere stone break an armored car? That is disturbing to me, because the president's car is bulletproof. And then it's being claimed that it was pelted and the glass was shattered.
Minister?
Well, I am not a security expert, but what I also know is that an armored vehicle, I think, has 2 layers of glass. There is the glass wall, which is inside, which is armored, and then the outer glass got shattered. But all these are being investigated by court and the police. And since there is a treason case in the court, I wouldn't want to go into details of that.
So
I'm
this,
sure
Minister, I have to say, as someone who doesn't live in Uganda, this feels incredibly trivial that we're talking about layers of glass on an armoured car, and there's some people who are fighting for their lives and may never be the same. I asked you, is this politics Ugandan style?
No, it is important for you to know that the whole problem, which was unfortunate, started from that pelting of the presidential convoy. And that is what gave rise.
I hear that. All right. So other than that, there's no other violence, there's no other reporters being beaten up, nothing else happens, just because of a car being pelted belonging to the president?
No, probably, if you want me, I can say that, you see, we have a constitution, and in Uganda, to access a political office, you must subject yourself to the population. Like Bobi Wine did when he wanted to become a member of parliament. He stood in one of the constituencies and he was voted. Now, the opposition, sections of the opposition, seem to be desperate. They now think they cannot dislodge the NRM government through the electoral process. And they have decided to use violence as a way of accessing power. And we have had a number of by-elections in the last few months where members of the opposition have facilitated this kind of violence. We recently had by-elections in Bujiri, in the Jinja East constituency, then in Arua, where we have seen this kind of violence. So there is a
So, Minister, I hear what you're saying. I hear that you are saying that the opposition or some opposition members have used violence as a way of accessing power. Unfortunately, online, that is not what people believe. I want to read 2 tweets, and I'll direct them to you first before giving them to Bobi Wine. This is Arua Boy. I just want you to listen to this, because this is scary, really. Arua Boy says, honestly, knowing our government, I am worried about Bobby's safety as soon as he lands back there. What I want to know is if he isn't worried about how he will be treated when he returns. Another person asks, my only question, how does he plan to stay alive? It's unlikely that he's not on a hit list. And so while I'll get Bobi Wine's answer on this, I want to know from you, as a member of the government, an acting information minister, what will you do to ensure his safety?
No, Bobi Wine is extremely safe. He is in court. He has been released on bail. And when he returns to Kampala, nothing will happen to him except appearing in court to answer the charges of treason. But he's very safe. Nobody will touch him.
Bobby, you're very safe. A lot of people, those were just 2 tweets. Seriously, almost all of the tweets we got had people very worried for your safety, for your family's safety. What do you say to them? What are you thinking?
Well, I would say that one can expect anything from this regime. I mean, I just went to Arua to campaign, and I ended up being tortured, detained in prisons, and even when I was released by court and allowed to travel abroad for specialized treatment, I was not allowed. So that is the situation at home. Anybody can sugarcoat it, but people continuously get extrajudicially killed, and it's all swept under the carpet.
I'm looking here at a post that you put on Facebook to tell everybody how you were doing and what happened to you. Tell everybody how you were doing and what happened to you. Your recollection of what happened to you before you were taken away. And it says here, your next steps. And I want to talk about the things that we must do together to continue this struggle for liberty and freedom. Why do you feel that Uganda right now is not a place of liberty and freedom? Uganda right now is not a place of liberty and freedom. In Uganda, there's no
liberty and freedom. In Uganda, people are allowed to meet and talk about anything. People are allowed to meet and talk about country. I've said it before, and I'll say it again that a murder case can happen, and it will take the police hours to show up, or even it will take the police hours to show up. The fire brigade will take hours to show up. But once the fire brigade you meet to discuss the future of your country, it will not take more than a few minutes before the police and the military police comes and brutalizes people. That is how it's happening. However, I also have conviction that because Uganda is full of mainly young people, Uganda is anticipating a future that they only imagine. A future. I believe that the time is now for us to come together. It has been demonstrated that Ugandans are coming together every day. The Ugandans are overcoming every day the divisions within tribes or religions or political parties, and they are more embracing the aspirations that they have together as a nation. So much as there are challenges, I am convinced that the oppressed people will soon be free.
So you mentioned young people. We got this comment live on YouTube from Richard. Richard says, Bobby has a big future and a role to play in the liberation of disadvantaged young people, so long as the government doesn't torture and kill him. Another person picking up on that theme of the youth, this is Bashir, who says, Uganda has turned into a political cemetery. Our president is severely sick, suffering from too much appetite for power, and Bobi Wine is the only remaining hope that Ugandans have to restore the rule of law. But he ends with this sentence, we are ready to die for him. That's chilling, almost. What do you think of that? What do you say to people like him? Because Bashir's not the only one.
It is humbling to know that it is not just about me. It is about all of us, and I've said it many times that this should not be reduced to just me or to just a small section of people. We are more than 44 million Ugandans, 85% of which are younger than me. I'm 36, but 84%.
Democracy in Uganda, and Uganda's administration does not like the opposition to be.
It is the right time for us to, I'm so glad that young people in Uganda are embracing the idea of freedom, and they're slowly overcoming fear, which has for so long kept us slaves.
Minister, when you hear this about your country, how is that? Because the whole world is listening to this, and the whole world is thinking there are some major issues with democracy in Uganda, and Uganda's administration does not like the opposition to be there. Minister.
Okay, thank you very much. I missed some of the conversation because the network got off.
Let me just repeat it very briefly. There's space for the opposition. There's not space for the opposition. How much space is there for them to operate? Minister, can you hear me? We'll work on that, and we'll get back to you if you can't hear me, because it's a little bit difficult. I know the connection between us and Kampala is a little bit tricky. There's something that President Museveni said just this week, and he was talking about other forces being involved in what you were trying to do in terms of leadership. Let's have a listen to what he said.
It is important that external players refrain from interfering in the internal affairs of other countries. Interfering in the internal affairs of other countries is morally and practically wrong. Morally wrong because the question is, what superior intelligence do you have to think that you can understand the problem in my house better than we, the occupants? If there is a problem in our house, we, the occupants, will solve it. Keep out.
Bobby, what do you think President Museveni was referencing there?
Well, I would say that it's a big insult to the people of Uganda. for the leaders to think that when they demand for freedom, when they demand for liberty, when they raise their voices about the rampant corruption, the rampant unemployment, it is an insult to claim that they're being funded or even being supported by outsiders. We recognize that Uganda is part of the global community. We recognize that we have development partners. And yes, we recognize that human rights and freedom is for the world over. We stood with many countries, and indeed we continue to stand with many other countries. So the world should be expected to stand with us, especially in this time when the eyes of the world are, fixed on Uganda.
Sure.
Yeah.
The eyes in the world are also, many of them, fixed on you. I wanted to bring our attention to the back wall behind Femi, and these are just some of the images and Instagram posts that people have been using and posting with Free Bobi Wine and Bobi Wine as the hashtag. At one point, in just a day, there were 97,000 mentions of that hashtag, and that's across the world. So clearly people are watching the story. But then what comes next? Jazeera here on Twitter says, what policies do you have that you personally think can transform the youth in Uganda at large? Another person picking up on that says, apart from the freedom promises that you talk about, what plans do you have for unemployment? Are you thinking about policy changes right now, or will those come later?
Of course, the conversation is wide, but you take on first things first. Right now, I'd like to mention that many Ugandans are educated both in Uganda and abroad. Because of the rampant unemployment, we've seen a lot of brain drain, a lot of talented, intelligent young men and women, or even the old people have left Uganda and exiled themselves or gone all over the world to seek for, better pastures. And even those that have stayed in Uganda have not gotten any chance to put their talents and knowledges to play, simply because Uganda has become more of a family state. The level of patronage is so high. So right now, we are struggling for space to put all our talents to use, to give opportunity to all these people that have knowledge to put it to use. But before we have that opportunity, we would be dreaming to provide optional policies.
Bobi, we have so much to talk about, so what we are going to do is we're going to wrap up on this part of the program, and then we're going to take everybody online to YouTube. If you're already on YouTube, that's good. If you're not sure where we are on YouTube, go to our Twitter page and look at @AJ Stream, and we will send you the link so you can click on it, and then our conversation will continue. We will continue with the Minister of Information for Uganda, and also MP Bobi Wine, Malika Bilal, myself, and of course all of your questions that you have for Bobi Wine as well. So we are done for now on TV, but we continue on YouTube in just a moment. See you there.
Ugandan pop star turned politician, now charged with treason, but released on bail.
Empowering our people is the only way we can confront that never again will a president be a king in Uganda.
Robert Kyagulanyi, aka Bobi Wine, talks to Aljazeera.
People in the government,
perfect formula for authoritarianism and tyranny. Let me ask you straight up here: is the two-state
on principle and on the ideals that took to take over power. So I believe to take over power. So I believe that as a nation, we need that as a nation, by all means, we need to come together regardless of political party, regardless of political party, and find and look at the best in each other. And look at the best in each other.
Minister, it's good to have you back. Sorry about that slight breaking Skype connection with you. The one thing I would love to be able to go away from this conversation and absolutely feel confident knowing is that the government, your approach to opposition and other political ideas. How are you dealing with the fact that the opposition has been successful.
Well, first of all, in 2005, we went into multi-party politics, and the opposition is free, and the opposition is free. We have had elections every 5 years, where the opposition actively participates, but the reality is, majority of Ugandans continue to support the NRM party and President Yoweri Museveni. And I am not in parliament because I am not in parliament. I was voted by the people in my constituency. Similarly, in my constituency, every 5 years, he goes to the population. He has challenges from the opposition. He has challenges. He's overwhelmingly voted. He got over 60% of voters in Uganda endorsing him. So anybody that claims him that the opposition has no space in Uganda is just a liar. We have members of parliament. We have various political parties in our parliament. Political parties in our main opposition party. We have the opposition party. We have the UPC party. We have UPC. Independent members of parliament. Independent members of parliament. We have JEMA. So there are many political parties in the opposition, represented not only in parliament but also the local councils. So it is not correct. So when my friend that the opposition in Uganda does not have the space, freedom. So when my friend, like I said earlier on, anybody who wants to freedom a political office, like I said earlier on, anybody who wants to access a political office, from the level of up to the local council, the member of parliament, district chairperson, up to the local council, to the will of the people who decide, has subject himself does not the will of the people, the people who decide. President Yoweri Museveni does not impose himself on Ugandans. This Uganda Bobi Wine who decide who choose him to be a president. When he made a decision to be a politician, he went in his constituency, campaigned against. When he made a decision to be a politician, he went in his constituency, campaigned against the candidate, against other opposition candidates, saying he won, and he came to parliament. So the very democracy, fake, like he says, he's saying is the very democracy which turned him from somebody who was from the ashes, is the very democracy which turned him from somebody who was from the ashes, is that democracy, a member of parliament, is not that who can speak from Washington.
Bobby, I'm just wondering if they just don't like you.
That the democracy.
So Bobby, I'm wondering if they don't like you. Thank you, Minister. Bobby, I'm just wondering if they just don't like you.
Yeah, it's not that
maybe
they don't
like you, what you represent.
Just scared of the change.
Yeah,
it's not that they don't like me. I represent. Just scared of the change and for the ideas that I represent. The freedom against being tortured. He asked me what kind of freedom I'm fighting for. We're fighting a different view. The freedom against being tortured, against being beaten for holding a different view. Whenever it must be noted that we campaign in peace until the president shows up. In Uganda, the most dangerous thing we campaign in peace until the president shows up. In Uganda, the most dangerous thing is to hold a different view from the president. The Minister of Security, the young people of the country, on national TV just a few days ago and said to the young people of the country, so-called freedom whoever is dead, and indeed the minister pushing for the so-called freedom is dead, and indeed the minister on national TV and told the young people of Uganda that if you think you're going to change the regime, was on national TV and told the young people of Uganda that if you think you're going to change the regime, you are dead. So there's a kind of intimidation, the kind of brutalization that is not even insulated at all. It is outright.
And by there, I mean
here's
the government.
A critical tweet from Butera David. He writes in that
people
power should not be built on violence. Here's a critical tweet from Butera David. He writes in that people power should not be built on violence. Bobby should make it clear to his supporters he's been a critic of the government despite his occupation as a member of parliament. Young ideas are what we vote for, not young people, and judgment should not be made on age. So he's among a few people who say your supporters need to know that violence is not the answer. Do you believe that your supporters are causing violence in the first place? And then secondly, what would you say to his tweet who says you need to be telling people?
I will be very clear to him and remind him that we as the opposition, or we as the people of Uganda, we don't run the institutions of violence. It is the police that has the guns and the army, and those are the ones shooting people, not the other way around. So it's important to know that it is the government institutions and precisely the the armed institutions that have been unleashing ferocious violence on the people. And indeed, yes, I will make it very clear that to represent young people does not mean that I'm disrespecting the older people. But the fact is that 80% of Ugandans have never seen another president. 80% of Ugandans, 85% of Ugandans are under the age of 35. So representing those young people is actually representing the majority. We know that we learn from our elders. But if elders are not giving the right example that we want to follow, we want to invent our own world. We want to live by our aspiration, by our imagination. And our imagination is a free Uganda where everybody is equal under the law.
I want to share something from your Twitter feed. I'm going to make you have this part of the conversation because I know you hate doing this. Bobi Wine safely arrived in the US where I'll be receiving specialized treatment. And then I'm just going to scroll down here. And this is Barbie, your missus, and you, looking not as well as you're looking right now. Firstly, how are you physically? How are you doing?
I would like to say I'm better than yesterday. And hopefully tomorrow I'll be better than today. So I'm getting better every day thanks to the doctors back home and the doctors here in the United States.
And then there's something about what you do and the prominence with which you do it that then makes everybody around you incredibly vulnerable. So I know certainly your wife has had some issues with her NGO that she runs. Tell us about that.
Well, my wife has been in fear. Just the day I left the country to come to the United States, you just mentioned that my wife runs an NGO called Caring Hearts Uganda, which focuses on teaching rural girls to make reusable sanitary pads. But her founding partner was abducted by armed forces. He was beaten, tortured for 3 days, and then later released on a promise that he was supposed to testify against me and claim that that NGO is the one that foreigners are using to send money to us, to send money to me. So not only my wife, but my entire family is living in fear. They know what has been happening to people like Dr. Kizza Besigye, and every day they're expecting the worst. They know
a prominent opposition leader in Uganda. People certainly in Uganda and East Africa will definitely know him.
Yeah.
Were you ready for this? When we talked to you a couple of months ago and you were talking about going into politics and using your platform, were you ready for this part of it? The fear, the threats, the beatings, the torture?
Well, I always knew that there was persecution, of course. I always knew that I was dealing with a regime that detests any kind of competing opinion. However, I must say I did not know that the regime would descend, would go lower to this level. I did not know they would get to the level of torturing an innocent Ugandan, framing him with possession of firearms, and then later on dropping them. I must say, every day the regime exposes itself, exposes another nasty side of itself.
Malika?
I want to end with two comments from our viewers. This is Romeo, who says, it takes a tremendous amount of courage to do what you are doing, even going against family and friends' advice. I salute you. And one more, this one from Captain Nemo on Twitter, who says, just thank him for us. I think he's doing it for himself right there. The level of awakening he has put amongst the youth is just amazing. Incredible seeing young people leading social and political change in Uganda since Bobi Wine rose to parliament. And of course, his music raised us.
Bobi Wine, thank you so much. And also thank you to Minister Chris Barrio-Munsi. We really appreciate you coming on the program. Not every time do we get a government response. We appreciate you being part of this program as well. Bobi Wine, Minister, thank you very much. And to all of our audience who've been part of our conversation, thank you too. You'll find Malika and myself always online at AJStream on Twitter. Take care.